Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Talk. My name is Dikasse, and I'll be your host for today's discussion. I just wanted to introduce our guests. So thank you so much for joining, everyone. And we'll just take a moment for everyone to introduce themselves. We'll just start out the top left here, at least on my screen. Darra, can you just introduce yourself in a few words?
Yes. Hi, guys. My name is Darra Vaughn. I am a senior at ECC. I'm a chemistry major, and I like science.
Yes. Welcome, Darra. All right. Le Parisien, I don't know what your first name.
Hello. So my name is Hamza. As you all know, I'm from Burkina Faso.
Okay.
I'm an international affairs major, and I love the outdoors.
Okay, welcome. That's nice. Cheick?
Oh, I'm the only Cheick today? All right. I'm
Yeah.
Cheick Decartel, African citizen, just happened to be from Burkina. I think that's all about me.
Okay.
Okay.
Madina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Madina, Burkina Faso American from Newark, New Jersey. I am really into politics. I recently got my master's in public administration from NYU. So, yeah, I am all about politics and social justice.
Yes, congrats and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last but not least, Landry.
Hi, my name is Landry. I live in Brooklyn. I'm an architectural designer, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Okay, round of applause for all our guests. Thank you so much for joining. All right, so as you guys probably heard, maybe you haven't watched it yet, but last week on July 31st, Beyonce dropped her visual album or musical album, however you'd like to call it, Black is King, which was written, directed, and produced by her. It had some mixed reviews, and some people received it well, some people loved it, and some didn't. So my question to you is, do you feel like the backlash she received on Black is King was understandable, or did people overreact? That's the question. All right, who wants to kick off? Go ahead, Madina.
I think that it's never a good idea to be the main person directing, writing, and producing a piece. Like, I think Tyler Perry does similar things, and we haven't seen a lot of progression in his work since, like, he's come out, and that's been a huge criticism of him, because it's just like, okay, you're the main person doing everything. You don't really have a writer's room. So, like, how are you having anybody really give you critical input and, like, some great critiques that you can take into account if you're the only one making all the decisions? Now, I like Beyonce a lot. I don't feel like I need to say that in order to give her a critique. And I feel like we as a generation feel the need to oftentimes, before we critique anybody, specifically people of that level of fame like Beyonce, people feel the need to, like, you know, exclaim their like for her. And I'm like, I don't think that's necessary. She's not above reproach. She's not a god. Like, you should be able to, you know, criticize her in a respectful way. And that doesn't take away from her artistry or take away from her as a person. Now, do I think some people hate Black women? Yes. And I do feel like some people, you know, find any opportunity to shit on Black women. Yeah, of course. And that's never going to not exist. So sometimes, you know, some people just don't like Beyonce just because they don't like her. Some people have hangups about her for various reasons. But I do think that people were warranted, specifically Africans and first generation Africans and Africans throughout the diaspora, were warranted to feel a way about the representation of Africa, the African people, and the culture in Black is King, you know, so.
Okay.
Who wants to go next? Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. And I totally agree with you, Madina. It's a lot of people feel like they have to put disclaimers first. They're about to critique or, you know, just give their opinion, maybe not a positive one on a person, but there's a way to do so respectfully. So totally agree on that point. So anyone else, their thoughts on Black is King? Yes, go ahead, Darra.
So I am not here to say anybody else's feelings about it is valid or not valid, because how you feel about it is how you feel about it. As a Black American, I kind of thought it was cool, but I also do understand why people who are African first generation, or whether they still live there or across the diaspora, I understand why they may feel a way about this movie or her project. So I don't think that like the criticism was wrong or right. I just think that it was them expressing how they felt. I personally, like I was telling Dikasse before, I personally don't know if I like the whole like all of our ancestors were kings and queens thing. I can only go back as far as to like a Bill of Rights in my family. So anything after that, I have no idea what my ancestors were like. And I think that sometimes as Black Americans, we may want to have this like idea of like we come from royalty, we come from great people, which is nothing is wrong with that. But like, why can't you just have normal ancestors that are not kings and queens? And why do we have to just always say that and think that? So I don't know if I really like that aspect of it. But I mean, it was, from what I saw, it was beautiful, but I just can't relate to it. Like, I just feel like a disconnect from it. So I wasn't really feeling it too much.
Cool. Hamza, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, to me personally, I feel like I got myself caught up in between viewing it as an African born in Africa and someone who's been in America and viewing it. And that's two very different perspectives, right? Like last time I was watching Madina critique about it, and I listened to it the whole thing. And I tried to say, okay, you know what? Let me try to see what she's trying to say. Because if I'm looking at it from my African view, it's like this. Okay, these people, this is African American people talking about Africa, saying that, oh, actually our ancestors are from Africa. So this is already good enough for me. This is how African people want African American people to believe. They just want them to acknowledge that they're African. So as long as they're doing that, people already feel satisfied. But beyond that, then you look at it, is it reality? It's not even. Because when you look at it, that's not the reality in Africa. We're still, like if you look at Burkina Faso, for example, they didn't represent us. You can't feel any reality out. You can't relate to it, basically. It's like an African-American person living in America. You have a lot of opportunity, but in reality, that's not what is happening in Africa. So then you say, okay, how I'm going to say this? Oh, man. There is this belief that once you guys promote the idea that Africa is king, people are going to start looking at you guys as such. But is it reality? No, it's not. And therefore, I kind of disagree that the whole thing was, I don't know, maybe they're overreached. That's how I felt.
I saw Cheick and Landry go off mute. I'm guessing you guys have. Landry, you can go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I mean, so obviously when Beyonce like releases something, there's always going to be like a huge kind of reaction, positive, negative, whatever. So that's kind of like, you know, you kind of expect that when she like did it. So like everyone sort of interprets it, I guess, based on like their experiences and like where they're from and blah, blah, blah. I personally, did I think it was the best thing that she did? No. Did I enjoy watching it? Yes, I did. I think that a lot of, I don't know, at least the way I saw it, a lot of the like messages wasn't to be taken like literally. Like for example, like being descendants of like kings and queens. I don't know if that, at least I didn't see it as like, oh, we're all like from kings and queens, because I don't think I am, you know. I think it was more about like sort of recognizing where we're all from, which is Africa, and recognize, sort of like finding like the beauty and the love within ourselves, which is like the equivalent of like, you know, finding your royalty and sort of expressing yourself in that royalty or that self-love in a way. So like I didn't see that as, you know, as she was literally saying that we're all from like kings and queens, you know, because that's obviously not possible. I just think I feel like there was a lot of metaphors, and all of it was conveyed through, you know, the whole Lion King story, because, you know, Lion King Simba is supposed to be the king, and it was like sort of like the lens that, at least that's what I think, it was kind of the lens that she used to like express all of these thoughts that she had. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay. Cheick?
Yes, from my perspective, first thing that I have to say is Another congratulations to her, Beyonce, for doing that, because that was a real piece of art. First thing that I have to understand is you have an African historical piece of art on Disney Plus right now. That never happened in history. Yes, because how do I say that? First of all, we have too much expectations when it comes from our entertainers. Beyonce is not a history teacher. So for us to sit here with our kids or our friends or whatever and expect Beyonce to come and teach us about African history, it has to be shame on us. And the reason why I say it has to be shame on us, I'm gonna just show you one little picture that I have here. I don't know if y'all can see it. This one, it's right here, if y'all can all see it. A lot of people took it as, oh, she's being a devil worshiper. A lot of Christians. A lot of Christians took it as, oh, she's being a devil worshiper. She's bringing the Illuminati to my household. She's making my kids think about the devil. When you pay attention here, this lady here is from Togo. That's a tradition in Togo to have the bullhead and the tobacco because it's a reincarnation or call to the spirits of peace. And like, I don't know how to say it in English, but peace and ease in your locality. So most of the times after a funeral or things like that, I still have to do my research. But so far what I was able to come up with is after events that would cause unrest in the place, the women, the elder women of that place would have to do that and have a ritual in that neighborhood or the locality just to bring back peace and ease. That's just one simple example there. But what I'm trying to make as a point here is at the end of the day, Beyonce is a singer. She's an entertainer. You go into school, we all been to school. Nobody went to school and asked the teacher why you don't remember about Pop Smoke or why you don't know about Snoop Dogg or all of that. So why are we expecting Beyonce to represent some type of history? Why are we expecting Beyonce to represent our history teacher that didn't give us the lessons we needed at school? If you still need to learn something, go back to school. Don't put it on Beyonce. She's an entertainer. She's singing and dancing. She used to shake her ass. And you have parents and Christians that used to complain, oh, she's naked on my TV. I cannot allow this in my household. And now that she's kind of not just teaching history, but making a piece of art out of history, because you got to understand that art is an expression of the artist. Art is not what we're expecting from people. So hold on to your own horses. If you want something on TV, you have to get on to working on it. She was able to come up with a budget and associations on the people, whatever, to create something. So in order for us to not just enjoy that, but to be there and be like, oh, I'm mad that Beyonce misrepresented African history. And that's too much expectations that we're putting on entertainers. She's literally a singer. It's like going to McDonald's and mad that your burger maker can't do stock tradings. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think like it's so easy nowadays with the internet and everything to learn about Africa that we should really enjoy and appreciate Beyonce for what she's doing, because as an entertainer, that's history for us. We won't see an entertainer like Beyonce for the next maybe 50 years. Let's think about it. All these singers are come and goes. So we got to just enjoy people for the moment, experience life for the moment. Don't put too much expectations on people for what you can't even do. Africa's ours. None of us, we can just pick up a camera, go talk to our grandfathers and put it on YouTube so Africans can learn about Africa. None of us did it. And when you see a lot of Americans bringing back about that kings and queens shit, I understand it. We're not all kings and queens, but at the end of the day, if there's a piece of history that you can get to, and that's the only piece of history that is intact, that is there for you to get to, we can't blame them for it, because all African history has been thrown to the trash.
I would push back against that, and I think it's important for people to understand that when you are an entertainer, when you are front-facing, it's accountability there. And when you take on a project as massive as, you know, saying that you're going to represent Africa and you're going to do a love letter to Africa, that requires accountability. You can't do that and then represent Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa only, right? Like there's 54 there's 54 nations and there's 5 regions in Africa. The criticism is that, you know, Lion King is not a historical film. That's first and foremost, right? Fiction. It's a fable. It's like Nancy the Spider. It's make believe. Like Lion King has no real pretext. It's loosely based on African elements in East Africa, such as Tanzania and Kenya. And that's another criticism that people have. How can you make an album and make an entire video with no reference to East Africa? Like, and that's why people are like, you know, is this actually about representation? Is this actually about you paying homage, or is this capitalism in play? Because like the majority of the artists that you have represented are Nigerian. Like, if you wanted to make a love letter to Nigeria, I feel like that would have been sufficient, because that's what it seems like. You know,
That's not the case
Nigeria,
at all. I don't
Ghana,
think so.
and South Africa, in my opinion, already get enough shine. I'm not saying it's their fault that they do that, because, you know, they're a little bit more well known for various reasons, whether that because of their colonial ties to, you know, the English, and because English culture is much more well known to Americans than French culture. But it would have made more sense for you to at least Beyonce to at least have artists represented from each of the 5 regions, if you're going to say that's a love letter to Africa, right? And then on top of that, like, the film wasn't historical. It was entertainment, yes, but art is open to critique. And I was not a fan of it, and many people were not a fan of it, not because we expect too much from Beyonce, but because, again, if you're going to take on a project that vast, you have to do so in a way that is appropriate. You can't do this Wakandification of African culture and mesh Zulu elements and Asante elements and Yoruba elements, and then market that to the mainstream as this is what everyday Africa is like. That's very problematic. And on top of that, it's like, okay, yeah, you're marketing this, but for whose eyes? Because the majority of people that you're marketing this to don't even have access to Disney Plus on the continent or within the diaspora. So, like, who is this actually for, you know?
Yeah.
You're saying is valid, but again, okay, sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in here and just add on to what Madina said. The main problem that I've saw with Blackest King was, you know, the Wakandification of Africa. And also, I think it was a portrayal of what America, or maybe Black Americans, view Africa to be. And that unification of all those 54 nations, as in Africa is just one. And that's an like age-old thing we've been like everyone thinking Africa is a country. So I think it stems even from that. And that was unfortunately what came through from Blackest King. And someone of Beyonce's status and influence level and all that, I'm sure she did research. I'm sure she can afford to do research. I'm sure, you know, she has the team to be better informed and educated on this thing. On the African continent and the countries within it. But I feel like it was kind of like a half-assed job in a way. And
I disagree.
The
reason why
sorry, and not half-assed. Let me just clarify. Not half-assed in terms of the visuals, because I feel like fashion on point, themes on point, everything. Like it was very well executed. But I feel like in terms of the message she was trying to portray, or the love letter to Africa, it was half-assed, at least to me. So
I'm going to jump in before I lose my train of thoughts.
Go ahead.
The reason why I say this project here is putting shame on Africans, this here is a proof of that. All of us, we here talking about she only represented Nigeria and South Africa. As soon as the movie started, the king came from Ceres, was welcomed by the Dogon people. The Dogon people, you have over 1 million of them in Mali, over 600,000 of them in Burkina. The ritual that they did for the king to be welcomed on earth is the Jula ritual. That's just number one, from the beginning of it. The blue guy represents Emaoya, Mamiwata, Oshun, wherever you're from. That's a universal culture in Africa. Africans don't know nothing about Africa. We think we know Africa. We don't know Africa. If you follow this movie, if you know African history, if you know African culture and your traditions, what you did is a traditional representation of a lot of countries. Yes, a lot of these artists were Nigerian, but you got to also understand business. We live in a capitalistic society. A lot of these artists are signed by Rockefeller, would managed by who? Mr. Carter, who's Beyonce's husband. At the end of the day, you have to make money off of somewhere. We can't be emotional about business. But if you're going to pay attention to the art that is being done, every tribe, every essential tribe in Africa was represented. If you know history.
Not true. That's not true.
Tell me the tribe that was represented, because the West was represented, the East was represented, the North was represented, and the South was represented. At the end of the day, we cannot represent all the villages. We have over 1,000 tribes just in Burkina.
Right? Like Pan-Africanism is great, and you know that's very important. Like we understand that. That's why she took on the project, because she wanted to not only, you know, connect back to her African roots, but also allow Black Americans to feel connected to the African continent. So that's great. That's awesome. But again, just because you have similarities, just because Burkina Faso culture is similar to Ivorian culture in certain aspects and similar to Yoruba culture in certain aspects, do not make them the same.
So you would have rather seen a project done in 52 countries with 52 main
No,
tribes?
that's not
Because
what
even
I'm
in
saying.
Burkina,
What I'm
listen to me,
saying
even in
is-
Burkina, when you follow the news, and I'm sorry if I cut you off, but I really have to get that out, because even just in Ouaga, on TV, the national news is French and Moray, and then every other language follows non-priority. People are complaining about it because you have over 1,000 tribes just in Burkina. Just 11 million, just 16 million people, you have over 1,000 tribes, over 600 languages. They're not all
What
represented
I'm
in
saying
Burkina.
is
So
the
we cannot put that on
mainstream is
Beyonce that is
already
not from Burkina to
aware
represent
of
all the countries.
Nigeria. The mainstream is already aware of Ghana. The mainstream, for the most part, is already aware of South Africa. There
And the
are
mainstream that is aware of
other
history could have
countries
seen Mali
in
and
the
Tanzania and all of
West.
them.
Beyonce could have done a better job with Black is King by putting on countries that are not well known. And yes, you cannot do a project about Lion King with no East African representation. That is
There's no lions in East Africa.
Say it again.
There's no lions in East Africa. What are you talking about?
But the Lion King is based on
That is
East Africa.
fictional, Madina. It's fictional.
But it's still
a Disney
matters.
project.
Okay,
it still
guys,
matters
hold on.
amongst the
5
project.
seconds. Oh, I want to allow other people to speak. Landry, I believe you had something to say.
Yeah. I kind of forgot. No, yes, I remember Madina saying something that it was it more about capitalistic gain, or was it more about, you know, the culture and the art history of it? And I don't think that you should really see it as like these two different things, because I feel like you can do both, and I guess that's probably what people have a problem with, because it seems like she's doing it more for, like, you know, money and clout or whatever. I mean, she doesn't need clout, but you know what I mean. But I do think that there's something to be appreciated with the artistry and the cinematography and all the visuals and all the representation that we have. Yes, I understand that a lot of the, I guess, like the people that were featured and all of that were mainly from Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. But I do think that if she did something that sort of tried to represent everything equally, or I guess other stuff more, I feel like she would have also gotten some kind of backlash.
Yeah.
Like, people would have something to say about, oh, like, this is not actually how you're supposed to show it, blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, although, like, you and I, for example, are from the same country, but I'm sure that, I guess, our perception of the culture is different, you know?
Right.
So I feel like there still would have been some kind of backlash with, like, whatever representation that she would have had of, like, other places. So I don't know if that's really a fair way of judging it, you know?
Yeah. And I want to ask Darra real quick here. So as a Black American, Darra, and I know you said you haven't watched it, but from the clips you've seen on Twitter and all that, did at some point were you like, oh, is this what Africa is really like? Did you have that train of thought?
Yes and no. Yes, because I've never been there. I've never been to a single country in Africa. So I have no idea what it's like. I only get bits and pieces from what I see, obviously, from our media, from friends and family who have been there, and from just like my own research and things I've been exposed to. But also, after even just seeing like the movie Black Panther, I was like, there's no way like any of this is like, this is not real. And I also know that as a Black American, I'm like, they don't even portray like my history the right way. So there's no way that they know anything outside of like the US bubble. That's what I like to call it.
Yeah.
When we go out the country, we have like a tendency to think like, oh my God, this is not what they show on the TV. Look at this. They have houses. Like, like, because we're ignorant. And I think that like when things like this come about, that it really just makes people either expose their ignorant colors, or it makes people just go and research and learn more. Because while Africa may not completely be like what Beyonce showed, I'm sure they don't want us to think, I mean Americans, they don't want us to think that it's like those, you know, those commercials that are like, oh my God, do you want to help an orphan child in Africa? because I don't think that's what all the African countries are like anyway. So I think it probably has to do more that she wanted to show it in more of a beautiful light than, you know, harmful. But even still, and then she's allowed to get critiques. Like, there are people that are allowed to say they don't like this. I just think maybe I need to go there and see it for myself. I trust Beyonce.
I just have one more follow-up question, because I'm very curious, like, you know, people who are not of African, like, you know, who were born there, you know, what their perception was. So would you like to have had a film that was a little more accurate in its portrayal of the African continent or an African country? Or do you just care about the art, and then that art is gonna, like you said, push you and entice you to go do your research?
I think I like both. I like the art because I can always appreciate some good art. I always can appreciate some good, you know, time, dedication, effort. But I also believe that we need to tell stories the correct way. And I think that we should try in our best capacity as possible, you know, to make sure that the things that we're saying, especially if we are someone who has a platform like Beyonce, make sure it is as accurate as possible. Because you have people that will not go and research and will take everything that they saw and say that is fact and use that as, well, Beyonce said it, it's in her movie. So I think that both need to happen. Yes, we can appreciate the art, and yes, we can appreciate everything that she did to go into that, but we also need some kind of accurate representation so that people know what you see is not always what you get. And there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
The main problem here is we need to take a little history class on art. If you go back down the line, art was financed by the bourgeoisie class to be expressed the way they want to see it, feel it, and hear it. Nowadays in 2020, things have changed, and because of Hollywood and cameras and digital art, we think that art is supposed to represent what we want to see, but it's still financed by somebody that want to have their own expression expressed in that. Therefore, every type of art that you see, that artist was financed by somebody, and they have to finish the contract and respect the contract. So every type of thing, anything that you see represented artistically is never going to be the correct way, because whoever founded it want their expression of it. That's why it's important to learn history and sometimes just take art for what it is, because art is art. Art can be history, but art is not history. History is just history.
I feel like, but with Beyonce,
like
she's someone that she researches everything that she's ever done. She is someone that she will not slap her name on just anything.
Yeah.
So I feel like specifically with her, the research that she has done or should have done, like, she definitely has the means, like Dikasse said, to make sure that this is accurate and correct. And I don't think that she would have applied her name to anything that was incorrect or that she felt as though what would taint her image. Because above all, like, she's Beyonce. She gonna make sure Beyonce is good. And I'm thinking even just from, like, the Homecoming, like, documentary, she went out and she got HBCU students to perform with her. She made sure that everything that she was doing was culturally correct. And as a former HBCU student, she did that. So why couldn't she take that and apply the same means and get the same, you know, result?
And I want to make a piggyback point off what Darra said. Like, you know, obviously I don't want to be insensitive because I have direct connection to the African continent and the culture. So obviously if I wanted to, I could book a flight to Burkina any day and, you know, kick it with the homies and the family, right? Obviously a lot of Black Americans don't have that direct connection. So, you know, we want to be cognizant of that. And we have to recognize the legacy of slavery and, you know, the transatlantic slave trade and, you know, just history, right? However, I've said this in my critique when I made my own critique about Black is King. You don't need to buy Disney Plus or watch Beyonce to learn about Africa, to learn African history, experience African authentic culture. Book a flight, book a trip, and go to Africa. Like, honestly, I feel like too many people in this country make excuses. People will go anywhere in the world, right? They will go to the Caribbean, Europe, Asia, South America, Central America and not care about climate, not care about language barrier, not care about uncomfortability, not care about cultural differences, and go. But anytime you mention Africa, people start to shake. They get nervous. They get scared. I'm like, yo, we ain't gonna eat you, right? You're gonna survive. You stay alive, right? Go to Africa. Like, if you really want to know what the culture is like, go to Africa. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm really getting tired of, people consuming these Wakandified art forms and images. Not saying that entertainment is not important. I enjoy Black Panther. It's entertainment. I enjoy the elements of Black is King. It's entertainment. However, if you really want to know what Africa is like and what the culture, and you want to really immerse yourself in the authentic elements of that, just go to the continent. We have 54 countries and we have 5 regions. Like, it's a playground for you to go and just have a good time. We'll treat you well. Like, so anytime I hear people like, this is, my first time going, like, seeing this kind of thing, or I'm not sure if this is true, do the research and go. Like, it's not that deep. Maybe it's just me, but it's exhausting.
I feel like if we were to look at it in a way like in a blueprint to information, then we will enjoy it. Because in my part, I haven't watched the movie yet, but I feel like if I was to watch it, I would look at it in an entertainment perspective. Because if you're looking at it like as if it was going to teach you some history about Africa, then you will be wrong. The whole thing was based on entertainment and how would people perceive Africa to be like, with the idea that we're kings and this and that. That was the whole idea. But if it was like maybe in a 10 episode series, then they would have gotten into details, and maybe we could have gotten the correct representation that each country was supposed to be in. And even if she was going to do that, there were people that were still going to disagree with some of the things that she was going to put in that movie. For example, even my parents, like if everywhere I go, if I tell them I'm from Burkina Faso, they'll say, oh, Thomas Sankara, I love that guy, this, that. But then I had that same conversation with my father, and he tells me, oh man, that guy, we can never forget what he did to us. My father told me that if he was to stay there in 10 years, it would have been good. But the short amount of time that he took to compress everything and move the country forward, it was very dangerous. He didn't like him, but he's from Burkina Faso, and everyone that you talk outside of Burkina Faso, they love Thomas Sankara. But imagine someone from that same country that wasn't able to see the benefits of it. So sometimes if we don't be careful, we tend to the things that we want to see in something, in someone else's perspective, if it's not conveyed that way, then we might see it as otherwise, a misrepresentation or something. But I feel like Beyonce did it in her own way. And if you want, I feel like anyone can get into details now. For example, if she mentioned something like, Mami Wata, like Decartel mentioned, Mami Wata was something like a scary thing that they used to say in Africa. Everyone in Africa knew about it. But if you look deep into it, there are people that follow it. It's a cultural thing, like a cult that people follow. So if she mentioned it, even if for 5 seconds, then you take the time and you do your own research, then we will be more aware of. So rather than looking at it as like a historical movie, I'd rather look at it like as if it was just, a blueprint to more information that you can look at.
That's true.
Right.
I think it's also important to recognize some of the historical elements that she did, pay homage to in the film, because, the Senegalese film, I'm blanking on the name, I think it's called Tuki Buki or something. Like, she paid homage to it before with On the Run tour, and I believe that also, like, the zebra print was also that as well. But I want to go back to Dar's point about the whole representation of kings and queens. It's very important for people to realize that not all Africa deals with royalty. Not all Africans are royalty, and not all descendants or people in the diaspora are royal, right? And I feel like, a lot of scholars have made this point before about that critique when it comes to the obsession of royalty and this whole connection of Black people having, power or being seen as valuable or not being seen as valuable unless they're connected to royalty. And I think that's extremely problematic. And I feel like that's why people are extremely tired of the Coming to America thing and the Lion King thing, because why is it that Black people or Africans have to be associated with royalty in order to be respected, in order to be loved, in order to be revered, like in order to matter, right? You should have to have some kind of lineage to royalty in order to matter, you know? So I want people to just be able to see Africa in like a light of like everyday Africans, just like going to the market, or like everyday Africans going to school. Like, why can't they just matter like that? Why do you have to matter unless like you have to proclaim that your ancestors were kings and queens, which might not even be true?
Do you think that, I mean, maybe I'm just not realizing, but do you think that people actually believe that if you're from Africa, you are like a descendant of royalty?
A lot of people actually believe this.
Not a
Like,
lot of people.
Really?
I think everybody.
Yes.
I think everybody.
believes it.
Really?
But I think that also goes back to, so there's 2 points I wanted to make. One, just responding to Madina, with everyone believing that, you know, their ancestry or their lineage in Africa is straight to like kings and queens and all that. Maybe that narrative was brought about to make Black Americans feel as if, you know, I don't know, just
Empowered?
a little better about themselves. And
I don't know. I'm not sure about
it's
that.
not true. Although it's not true.
I
Yeah,
feel like
although it's not
double-edged
true,
sword.
it's like, okay, you know what? I come from royalty, and I'm just gonna run with this narrative for, as people say, like, you know, you have your crown in your back pocket, like you're walking with your head down, walk with your head up, because you know you're royalty and all that. Maybe it's meant to, I don't know, to give that
Push you up.
exactly.
I prefer if someone just said your ancestors were great people, like, or and even if they weren't great people, what if they were just like complete ruthless people that like hated everybody and was like killing everybody? Like, even if they were those kind of people, like,
Yeah.
I just think that like I don't believe that. Like, I don't know if it just, for me, that makes me feel more disconnected than anything. I think
see.
No, you're not wrong. That's a fact.
I would feel more like they were regular people. I don't know them, but they were
Mhm.
regular people. They did the same things like me. I feel more connected like that than thinking they were royalty. And that's just a personal
If I can give my sauce for this gumbo, I get it. I understand it. Not everybody is king and queen. But also, not every king and queen is associated with luxury. And that's a misconception in society that we have. There's a lot of kings and queens back home.
Yeah.
Just before you get to my village alone, you're going to see at least 10 kings. There are kings.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have no kingdom. They don't have no subjects. But they are kings.
Kings or chiefs?
No. A chief, and then you become a king if you have more than, how do y'all call it? Out of 5 villages, you're a king now. That's how it works back home. 1 village, you're a chief. Out of 5 villages, you're a king. Kile Musi met. Anybody a Musi here? I think that's how it's supposed to.
I'm Musi.
Okay, that's how it works, right?
That is how it works.
Therefore, at least every city, like every campaign or whatever you call it, every province, have over 20 kings. That's a fact. That's a fact. So if somebody's descending from these people and they're living in America today and they're calling themselves a king and a queen, we cannot push them to associate with that, because they are. You're not a king that got golden horses,
I think that,
but you are royalty.
That's very historically inaccurate.
It's not inaccurate, because I've been with at least 30 to 50 princes in my class.
Like royalty associated with like status, power, money. Like they mean it like almost like the Queen of Britain.
Like even when Africa had powerful kings and queens, when Mansa Musa were, throughout his whole empire, he only had chiefs. So if you're just sitting there thinking that every king and queen was rich like him, he was one of a kind throughout history. There was none like him. So you can't think because you're coming from kings and queens, yours was just like that too.
I think regardless of the semantics about, you know, whether the king was a king in a European light or a king in an African light, it's just the concept of, in order to matter, you have to be a descendant of royalty, which is problematic. And I feel like that's the crux of the problem. Like I don't think
that's the connotation behind it.
Because you shouldn't have to be royalty to be respected.
Think so. I think it is the connotation behind it.
So
because
everybody think
I
they're
feel like
the kings and queens?
I think that it sounds better. Because for one, as a Black American, you already maybe have like some kind of identity issues. So then from there, if you know that your ancestors were someone who was worthy, in a sense, it makes you feel better about yourself. It doesn't, the way I can explain it is, it doesn't make you feel as though your family was just people who got caught. And they were just like ripped from their homeland and sent away. Like it's a little, it just makes you feel like there's something else to my lineage. There's something else to that besides just slavery. And while I don't agree necessarily with it 100%, I can understand why a Black American would be like, there's something more to me than, you know, my slave master's last name that I have, something more that I may not understand.
Right.
Exactly.
Coming from somebody
that same feeling that, you know, Darra's talking about, like the fact that it makes you feel like you matter more, even though that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
What Beyonce was trying to, or at least this is my speculation here, this is what she was trying to achieve by having Black is King. And Landry, I feel like this is something we were talking about, like the idea this was made specifically for Black Americans. This wasn't made for Africa. Can you talk a little more about that?
I mean, so like, I feel like we kind of want to see it as if it was a documentary, but I guess we just have to remember that it wasn't, like, it's not a documentary, so it wasn't really meant to depict things like exactly as they are. And I feel like she was just trying to use what she learned from that, like, African culture, like different African cultures, paired with like the story of Lion King, because I mean she did it for that, and sort of like seeing it as like the story of like Simba, like being like away from like where he's from, and then like realizing his worth and like what, like who he is inside, and like coming back to like, you know, his dad's kingdom and whatever, and becoming the king itself. I feel like it's kind of like the same. You can like equate that to like the African American experience. You know, it's almost like you were taken away from like where you're really from, and I want you to realize sort of like your worth and like where you really come from and like who you are inside, and like just like trying to make you feel like, you know, you are worthy, quote unquote, you know, and like your value, and like sort of having that be like the beginning to you reconnecting back to your roots.
Well, I feel like kings and queens, if we're really gonna get technical, I think the title was spot on. Africa, when you talk about Africa, it's literally kings and queens before the colonization, right? Every city that you go in to this day, they still have kings and queens, even in my city, right? So even one of the biggest mistakes I think Sankara did was when he didn't try to bring the kings into the political. He didn't make them very political. He wanted to like just castrate them to the side.
Yes.
And that was
did.
one of his and one of
I don't think that was a bad thing.
That was
no,
bad.
that was his
very
biggest
bad.
downfall.
He fucked us up with that.
That was his downfall, because what happened was when Sankara came to Tenkodogo, this is what my father told me, and he said he saw it with his eyes. He told the king that he has to get up from the tent and go sit and go, you know, make holes and work just like regular people.
Yes.
And this is not something that people take lightly. You got to understand, Sankara was a very young person. Right. He was very, very young. And for him to stay in front of someone that old and tell him, okay, get out of the tent with your big clothes and go work like regular people. This doesn't fly in Africa.
I think
he did the same to the king in Waidia.
Guys, let's just make sure we stay on topic here.
Because we're talking about Burkina, but like I want to go to Cheick's point about capitalism, because I'm anti-capitalist, and I think it's very important to bring capitalism and imperialism into the conversation, specifically neo-imperialism, as it relates to the African continent. And this was a critique that was, you know, given to Black is King and just Disney overall as a capitalist venture, right? First of all, Black is King didn't have a real connection to African media companies prior to like 18 of the 54 countries. And like, there's really like no real market within Africa when it comes to the connection of like the Disneyfication and all these other little narratives, right? So like, say for instance, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with No Name, but she made a critique about Black is King and was like, you know, let's remember that Black liberation is a continuous fight, and that, you know, let's continue to always speak truth to power and recognize the Black people worldwide, not just in the United States, but throughout the diaspora, who will never be able to see Black as king, who will never be able to feel empowered, and who are continuing to fight forces, you know, of, you know, oppression. So, you know, when people say that, you know, it's just business, no, it's really not business. Capitalism is extremely dangerous, and it is rooted in anti-Blackness, and it is rooted in white supremacy, right? And I don't think people realize that a lot of elements in Black is King, even though Beyonce, I believe, meant well, had, you know, capitalist roots in it. Like, you know, yes, you have a light-skinned woman who is trying to not center herself within the film. However, by way of optics, you are going to be centered. And what does that mean for a light-skinned Black woman to be the representation of the African people in this narrative, right? Also, what does that mean for Africans who will be viewing this, who already have hangups about colorism?
You have
and
light-skinned
about
Africans.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. Like,
her
okay, I'm
work,
just jumping, and I'm sorry
you know?
if I'm interjecting in anybody's. You know what? Finish, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I just feel like, you know, it's very important to, like, you know, yes, entertainment is entertainment, but I feel like, you know, the person I am, entertainment has always been used as a form of art. Entertainment has always been used as a form of resistance and a revolutionary act throughout the times. Everybody has known that music, artwork, visualization, dance always has been used as a form of revolutionary aspects. So it's just like Black is King was no different. Like, that was a political move in Beyonce's, you know, that was a political move to, like, you know, empower Black people, to, you know, encourage people to be pro-Black, to encourage people to be Pan-African, which is great, but you missed the mark. You know, if you're going to be political and you're going to try to be radical, do it completely. To Dikasse's point, you can't do a half-assed job when you do Pan-African, pro-Black radicalization. Like, you have to do it in a correct, I don't want to say correct way because that's subjective, but you have to do it in a really radical way. And I don't think, like, you know, partnering with a venture like Disney, even though obviously Lion King is connected to Disney, it's super radical, you know? And I'm not saying that Beyonce is radical, because she isn't, but, you know, it's a valid critique.
It's a very valid critique, but the part that can become a real big time jerker here is the fact that we have to not dissociate. Like, we have to associate things with where they come from. Just like Darra was explaining right now about the HBCU project that she did with Homecoming. That's her own project. I'm sure majorly financed by her people, her team. Therefore, she.
But it was connected to Netflix, so she was still beholden to.
No, she sold it to Netflix. It's different. She sold it to Netflix. She did it and sold it to Netflix. It was not connected to Netflix. Netflix owns it after they bought it. That's about it. So it's different. This project was created and owned by Disney. She wasn't brought to the table for her vision. She was brought to the table for her partnership. A good partnership that can bring them
I
more
doubt that, because
vision.
how was she not brought to the table for her vision when she directed,
Lion King?
it?
No. That's the problem. She only wrote. She only participated. I had to go back and get it up because I was surprised when everybody kept talking about she produced it. She only wrote it and directed it. That's it. You have a whole list of over 80 people, which consists of more than 40 Africans from every part of Africa that participated in the writing, directing, and production of it. Even the music, she didn't write any of the music. She didn't write one song in it. So you have to understand Beyonce was the representative of that project, but she was just a part of it. Beyonce doesn't, she's not big enough to control the Disney project.
At the end
Disney
of the
controls
day,
the world when it comes to media.
Person, you are going to get the most criticism, just like the president of the United States.
The criticism is right. The criticism is right. But as educated people, we have to acknowledge.
Guys, hold on, one at a time. Go ahead.
The criticism is right and it's on point. You cannot fight people's opinion. That's the craziest thing to do. People have to critique your project. That means they saw it. Good or bad, they saw it. So you need criticism. You have to deal with criticism if you are an artist. But us criticizers, or whatever you want to call us, critics or whatever, we cannot just pick up the leader of the trigger. Like, you cannot just pick up anything, like any type of critic and just bring it because we just want to be part of the conversation. We have to
I
make
don't think
sense
that's what
sometimes.
people are
And we have
doing,
to
though.
also build a valid criticism sometimes. At the end of the day, you here, like we are here in America. I don't know who's born and who's not born, but we're all in America and we know about capitalism in America. And for those that work in media, you know the power of Disney. You don't just go in fucking Disney office and talk about, I have a vision about Africa. We're going to start going to East Africa, to West
And
Africa,
that's
represent
the
it.
problem.
No,
Cheick,
that's
and
not a
that's the
problem, Madina. That's business. You're not going to go to your workplace.
It's not
Okay, let's just take a
business.
dumb example.
That's what
I'm sure
trying
when
to
you was going
get
to
you
university, I'm sure when you was going to
understand. That
school.
is a huge problem
No,
because
that's not a huge
you're
problem.
now
I'm sure when you go to school
manufacturing-
or when you go to an office, you're going to see a white guy wearing some African fabric. Are you
I don't
going to go
wanna cut you
ask him
off,
if he
Rich,
spent some money
because
on
I
those
am a
people
radical.
in that part of
I don't
Africa?
want to cut you off, but I'm just gonna let you know I'm a radical, and like I don't see the status quo as something that's gonna be what it is forever. I'm a radical, and I believe in dismantling systems and
What
dismantling.
are you doing from
structures.
your power to participate in
No,
that
this
radicalism?
is. I'm not the
Because
only
we
person that
cannot
talks
expect
about
people. We cannot look into Jesus from other people. What are we doing? Beyonce is an artist and a businessman or businesswoman,
So
whatever you want to
my
call her.
question
At the
is-
end of the day, what she did was her job. You don't
But
go to work
the-
or school
but you gotta
and tell your
understand-
teachers
hold
what
on,
to do and
guys.
what not to do. Where I work at WBLS and R97 when I used to go to work. I don't go there and ask like my black friends or my black co-workers when they're wearing African fabrics. Do you know about Zulu Nantala? She's the reason why this fabric exists. If you're not paying homage to her, you're a culture
No, I don't think
vulture.
that's
It
what
don't
the
make no sense.
argument-
Hold on. I want to hear from other people too. Darra, you had a question.
My question is,
And then we'll come back to you,
taking
Madina.
this criticism to Disney, straight to Disney? They don't have, clearly they didn't have people in the room, you know, to represent the parties needed. So should we just bypass Beyonce because she is just a pawn in this whole thing and take this criticism to Disney? Because I mean, they have slapped their name on it as well. So they are responsible for anything that it is lacking besides Beyonce.
I don't think we can just blame Disney overall because, like, yes, Disney owns the right to Lion King, yes, but Beyonce made it very clear in the interviews that she gave that when she was presented with the opportunity to work on Black is King, and presented with the opportunity to work on The Gifted, she wanted to do a specific project that will connect, you know, like African and also Black American elements, right? So like
marketing
that was a part of her vision. But back to the capitalist point, like the implications of this is very serious. And I think people need to understand, like, messaging matters. Like, what are you exporting throughout the world matters, and what people are seeing and the visuals they're seeing and the messages that they're getting about certain people and cultures and places are important. And that has really serious implications. And you can't take that lightly, and you can't say that that's simply just business and how things work, you know.
Self-accountability and self-education matters too. You can't just expect your entertainers to educate you. That's too much.
I don't need Beyonce to educate me,
So
and
you
I don't
shouldn't
think other
complain about
people
you shouldn't
need
complain about the
to
Beyonce
educate me.
project when
Okay, guys,
is not
hold on.
represented.
Landry, I feel like you wanted to say something, and then we'll get, because we have about 5 minutes left, so I want to hear from everyone else, like final thoughts.
Oh, well, okay. I was going to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead. If you have a question, go ahead. That's fine too.
I was going to say, so in this case, do you think that, you know, obviously I understand, like Madina said, like the implications of having like a light-skinned woman, like be sort of the face of all of this and how that can be harmful and all of that. I guess on the other side, you can also see it as maybe she's just using her privilege to, you know, be able to convey this message to like more people than someone else could have, you know. So I guess my question is, like, yes, there is bad aspects and good aspects about it. And what do you think? Do you think at the end, the good outweighs the bad, or the other way around? You know, do you think that at the end, it's like the fact that here we are, for example, talking about it, or the fact that like someone might see and be like, oh, that was a really nice visual. I wonder where she got the inspiration from. And then, like, you know, start researching and things like that. Do you think that the effect that that has outweighs the like potential harm that she could have created by doing that, or the other way around?
Great question. What do you guys think?
I think that the bad is bad enough, but I do think that the good is necessary because we are speaking about it. People are doing their research. Some ignorant people are learning that Africa is not what they think it is. So I think that whenever there's a time to educate and whenever there's a time to learn, that is always good, and that will always outweigh the bad. That's just, I think that if people are taking this as a moment to educate themselves, then it is good.
Okay.
End of sentence.
I also want to just critique. I might seem like just like, you know, I'm not satisfied with the film at all. I didn't like it, and I'm not gonna, you know, continue to like keep going on about it, because I did like certain aspects. I did, and I like Beyonce, like I said before. But even the title "Black is King" is also the gendered elements of the film. And I might sound really radical right now, but it's like, why can't you say black is powerful, right? I understand the whole Lion King element, so that probably why she did it. But also, like, you know, yes, the film was dedicated to her son, Sir Carter, which made sense as to why it had such gendered themes throughout. But I'm like, that's also problematic too, because it also erases specific communities within the African community. I feel like specifically, even though I'm not a member of the LGBTQIA community, I, you know, had conversations with people who felt like the film was extremely normative. And like, you know, I get that's how the Lion King was centered, and that's how it was written. But it's also like, you know, throughout the film, they talked about the experiences of black men, but I'm like, where's the experience of black women in this also, right? So I just felt like, you know, at the end of the day, Beyonce meant well, and it's great that this is on a public platform for people to see and for people to enjoy and for people to have conversations. But like, I feel like sometimes less is more. You can do a project and you can do it well when you don't try to do too much. When you try to take on too much, that's when you start, you know, kind of doing things half-assed, and like things get a little messy. I feel like, you know, has she possibly just said, okay, I'm going to do some Pan-African elements, and I'm going to like throw in just like these 3 countries and, you know, focus on these countries, because like the Lion King had nothing to do with Pan-Africanism. The Lion King had nothing to do with the black diaspora. Like, that would have made more sense just to focus either on the African element or focus on the black element. Like, but you got too much going on. So I just think it was just way too much going on.
Yeah. Let's see. Hamza, what are your thoughts? Final thoughts on
Well,
to answer?
I feel like the good outweighs the bad, because either way, at the end of the day, you're going to learn something about the movie. Whether you saw it as a bad thing, then you start doing your own researches. Maybe you saw it that, okay, it wasn't represented the way that I wanted it to do. And maybe it will teach other people to start doing their researches before they put things like this, because misinformation creates a lot of chaos. And if you watch the movie and say, okay, this part and this part wasn't very good, then you go and do your own researches. I feel like it's more knowledge. And if you are always going to be ignorant, you're just going to ignore it and see it as if. But more or less, I just feel like the good outweighs the bad.
Okay. Cheick, what do you think?
What I think is, yeah, just like what the Parisian said, the good outweighs the bad. And the reason why I say the good outweighs the bad, because at the end of the day, you don't have to burn the whole system. All we need is for you to spark the fire. And she did that. And the reason why I say she did that is because if you're able to go on and do your own research, you can do what you want to do. Some people read the Bible and do good. Some people read the Bible and do bad. Some people read the Quran and do good. Some people read the Quran and go bomb some fucking buildings. All I'm trying to say here is our generation also need to really pull our pants up, man up, woman up, whatever you want to call it, if I'm being sexist. Because the problem here, and I remember that from older people telling me that straight up, our generation, we have a fucking savior complex. And I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but we always expecting people to save us. When you pay attention to the work we put in, instead of just staying on the internet and talking shit, we're not doing anything. We're not on the ground doing shit. But we're always expecting other people to do the bigger work. And I remember my dad telling me that word for word. I'm not sure if y'all gonna make it. All y'all 30 and less, y'all too pussy for me. And that wasn't nothing directed towards a gender or nothing, was directed towards our generation, because he looked at us and was like, that's too much for me. And the reason why that made sense, and it's still even making more sense to me right now, is because we don't want to put in the work. We expect people to put in the work so we can go online and talk shit or talk good about it. We're expecting other people to put in the work so we can be happy or hurt about it. So to me, Beyonce did something good. She was hired by Disney to fulfill a contract, which she did as a capitalistic citizen. and that I have to be. I understand it and I respect it, and I have to deal with it. I'm not somebody that's just going to come and complain about the system. I'm going to come and learn, deal, know the system so I can win over it. So if there's anything I can say as a last word, let's work harder, because Beyonce put in the work and she did what she had to do, which is entertain us and make us talk, which is what we're doing right now. We're talking about it. She did her
People
job.
been talking though, Cheick. Beyonce isn't a radical.
But nobody said Beyonce was a radical. Like, why did I say she was hired by Disney for a contract and she fulfilled her contract? Period. Okay. If she had to tell y'all that this was going to unite Africa for y'all to follow it, that's called marketing. You went to school. You got your doctorate, so you should even know more about it.
Master's.
All right. I didn't go to school for too long. All I got is a bachelor. So I'm just telling you what I know. I'm telling you what I know, and what I know is if we've been to school, we got to know about business. We got to know about life. We got to know about the times we live in. This is
school doesn't teach you some of these things.
Okay, you guys.
Teaches you to learn about life, and this is not the 1900s. Okay. This is 2020. Beyonce did a business move, which was great. Let's learn from that and move on.
Okay. You know. Thank you so much for joining. I just want to give some final thoughts, and we can keep the conversation going in the comment section once we drop this video. But to answer Landry's question, like my own point of view into this is, one, I feel like if we're gonna base it off the narrative that says this is for, like you mentioned, Landry, for African Americans or for Black Americans, it would be more digestible to me, rather than just claiming it to be a love letter to Africa or for Africans. So I think there should be a clear distinction as to who the audience was for this, right? Because if it was,
what's the intent?
I mean, so that would have been a lot easier to watch and not analyze this film as much, because as an African, it's kind of I'm not saying like every African has to do this, but as a Burkinabe, someone watching this film, someone whose country isn't really in the forefront in the media, someone who seldom sees their culture accurately represented, and I see an opportunity for my country to be represented in a way, or a film that is going to touch upon such culture, I'm going to look at it with I'm going to pay attention to detail, because that's just it's what I do, and it's what I feel like people similar backgrounds as me are going to do as well. So that's one. But two, I do feel like it was beautifully made. It really was. And I was talking to my mom about it because we watched it together. She was like, wow, the amount of work that went into this, like it cannot go unnoticed. Like she did an amazing job in terms of visuals, in terms of the vocals, always on point. You already know, like storyline, the budget that went into this, like she's a hard worker and it's recognized. Like we understand that. So I feel like the good was that it sparked a conversation. It was a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, like artful, everything you want to call it. It was just that. And I feel like, having at least a movie touching or relating to Africa, but portraying it in a positive light, having that on Disney, which is predominantly white platform or whatever, that, that is a plus to me too. But obviously, as I've spoken to, there are negatives to it. So I'm torn. I won't say the good outweigh the bads, because the bad weigh a lot more to me than the good.
Same.
But I do feel like the good, it's important to not turn a blind eye to it, and to acknowledge the wonderful work that you do in terms of, visuals and all that stuff. So yeah.
Go to Africa, folks, if you want to learn about Africa. Book a trip.
Yes.
English is spoken on the continent in various countries. It's not that difficult. If y'all want to go everywhere else, you can go to Africa too. No more excuses in 2020. We're tired. At least I am.
Great.
Maybe
great.
not 2020 because COVID, but
not 2020, 2021 or 2022.
Oh yeah, 2021. Whatever.
Once Coco leaves these streets, so much.
My last word I have to say is just pick up a book, put in the work, and get off the internet.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Just
yes. Research. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This was a really great discussion. You all enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next episode of Week.